me put assessment 1. So this is assessment 1. As you can see, you guys have to write 2000 word. So when we talk about 2000 word, this 2000 word has to be exclude executive summary, your cover page, reference list, and table of content. Now, if I go through the assessment, and I will tell you about the details and also the structure that I'm looking for about this assessment, and I tell you what you have to do if you want to get a good grade. So let me share my screen. I got many tabs open, guys, so I have to find that. Sorry. Where am I put that? That's a good question. You are able to see the screen? Yeah, it's not here. Where am I put that? So I have to bring my Blackboard again and click on that. Okay, and share it again with you guys. The due it will be week 4, not after week 4. So you have to submit it by week 4. Yeah, as I said, so this would be your assessment. So this would be your assessment. You have to write 2000 words. So this is the instruction that the report will be used as a briefing document for your employer or consulting client for the introduction or continuing use of microservices. So you are required to briefly survey the history of computing and to explain how and why the present and contemporary suite of information systems are fundamentally different to the various generations of technology and can be used throughout the ages. And then followed by that point, you should provide a definition and framework for what a software architecture is and why it is important to enterprises. But when you go through the software architecture later on, I'll tell you what I want. I don't want you quickly jump from the history of computing to the software architecture. So I want you go step by step. So a short summary of the main types of software architecture should be precede a conclusion as well. So for beginning the assessment, you should provide a short summary of what your role is in the hypothetical professional context and explain about your background that make you qualified to give advice on microservices architecture. So once you have established your credential, you should introduce the paper, provide its content, and they conclude. So in preparing for this assessment, remember that the activities include all modules are specifically designed to scaffold of your understanding, and it will be really useful. So if you have attended all online classes and participate during all activities and submit your activities during online class, no problem. For reference list, you have to use APA mode. And for see how I'm gonna mark you, this is the marking criteria that you have to follow. Now I'm gonna share my whiteboard and tell you exactly what I want, and then you guys again have to make sure to go through this structure and make sure to come back with your question again next week with me. So the first thing that I'm looking for is the cover page. So you should have your cover page. Followed by that, after cover page, you should have the table of content. So your table of content has to be included. Let me write here, then it will be clear. Give me a second, guys. I have a really bad writing. So the table of content here. Let me make my screen bigger as well. Okay, yeah. The table of content has to include background about yourself, which is about the credential one. then followed by background. You should have your introduction, then you should have conclusion and appendix, finally reference list. Then when you follow that, you have to go through the content of your page. Now what you have to do, you have to start to give a background, a little background of yourself. And that's the credential part. And you will say, for example, this is your name, this is what you are doing, and then you started to go through the credentials, and basically as it says, you have to go through the credentials and justify all the credentials if you want to get a good mark. Some people, if they don't go through the credential, they are not gonna given any mark. So you have to say that where you graduated, and like you just think that you where you used to work, like in your country or even in Australia, and what was your responsibility for the project that you had in your country, for example. And also you have to say that, like on the behalf of yourself, that what would be your concern, that how you will basically always involved with the technology and studies and work, and your experience and knowledge. And then followed by that, you will go to the introduction. So for the introduction, basically you will start to give a little bit introduction about microservices. Then you start to go through all parts that has been asked in your report and brief. So I don't want, as I said, you quickly jump and go to microservice to the software architecture. I want you exactly tell me step by step what happens to reach to the microservices architecture. And it's not only about explanation, you have to justify very well and explain exactly where it comes from and give some examples. For that, you have to go through the conclusion, and sometimes people only write the conclusion, but for this one, you have to do the future predictions as well. So you have to say like how it would be in future. For example, currently, like most of this country enterprises using microservices in their businesses, but how that future, how do you predict future? So how would be in future? Does it make sense, guys, to you? So all these things need to be involved in 2000 words? Yes, except table of content, cover page, reference list, and appendix part. So what I want to do from now to next week, go and start to work on your assessment, because your assessment due is on Sunday, week 4, and you guys have to submit your assessment on time because there is no any extension for this assessment. Any questions so far? So if you don't have any question, these are your activities for next week.